Hi everybody and welcome back to the painting channel. Today I have got 6 great tips for you guys when it comes to thinking about and mixing darks for your watercolor painting. So let's roll the intro and let's see what it's all about. Hi guys, and a big warm welcome back to the painting channel. Now, as I said at the start, I have got 6 great tips for you guys when it comes to thinking about and mixing different colors to create lovely darks for your watercolor paintings moving forward. Now, I do know that there are so many methods out there to create darks, and I also know that there are as many color combinations that you can choose as there are days of the year, and probably a lot more besides. But what I wanted to do today was to tell you or talk to you the way I approach the subject, what I think about when it comes to mixing a dark, and also some of the color combinations that I employ using the palette that most of you know that I use here week in, week out for my tutorials. So I'm sort of using what I've got pretty much and letting you know how I go about it, and I'm going to show you some of those things as well. So without further ado, let's get on and let's see what it's all about. Okay, ready? Let's get this underway. And the very first thing I want to talk to you guys about is actually the tone, not a color, of black. Now, there are several ones out there that you can buy, and I don't happen to use any of them. I found a couple of tubes with my wife in my wife's arsenal of colors, so she kindly lent them to me to put some color on here and show you. Now, the first one I'm going to go with, this one, which is a ivory black. Now, I have heard tell, and I don't know if this is true or not, that it was originally made from parts of a precious animal to us, and I don't know if that's true or false. Forgive me if I've got that information wrong, but I think that's how it derived its name. And this one, I understand, was made from soot originally, and so there we are. That is lamp black. Now, there is another one we could have put in there. I don't happen to have that at all. That is ivory black. And one other color that comes to mind that comes close, but it's very much cooler. This one is Payne's Grey. Now, they look on the surface very dark. And of course, they would be the blacks. And although arguably this is more of a paler grey, certainly it is a very blue grey when it comes to when you start making a tint from this. So we have a very blue color, but this is the lovely lamp black. There we go. And this one is the ivory black. Slightly drier, but there we go. Now you can see, to me, they're very similar. There's a little bit more yellow maybe going on with this, and certainly a little warmer in there, and very cool color in this one. Now, on their own, this is what I wanted to talk to you about. Yes, they are black, and a lot of students, when they want to darken a color, they will reach for a black. In other words, if you've got a very, let's just go in for some Aureolin here. Now, if I wanted to make that darker, there are other ways of making that darker, but what a lot of people would do is they just grab some black paint and they just throw that in there and make a darker, very dirty, grubby yellow. It really doesn't do much, and it certainly will not answer the situation when it comes to that. I mean, if you were to use the same color here, this is more Aureolin, stronger mix. If I was to put some of the ivory black in, you'll see that that will almost start to turn. There's a bit, I believe there's a little bit more blue in the ivory, but it starts to turn to a grungy green. Now, that's not to say that if you've got black in your arsenal of paints on your palette that you need to throw them away. Of course not. What I'm suggesting is that if you're going to use a black, then mix it with other colors. So if you've got a black, this is Payne's Grey, Sorry, this is ivory black. If I wanted to mix that down with something else, I can do. And I can mix that away from the black and making a dark color. All right, that's when it works. But when these two certainly dry up, they just look dead, lifeless. And the reason for that is that black absorbs all light spectrum. The light just literally passes through. It soaks it in like a big black hole. And that will just kill off your painting. If you've got certainly large areas of this, it will kill it off. Another color that in too much dominant proportion will do the same. This is neutral tint. Essentially a very color sort of transparent dark. It's quite warm, as you can see. But if that was in strength, if that was in a large area on your painting and very, very dark of pigment, then it will become very, very lifeless. Now, luckily, this is the Schminkel one, and I firmly believe that I like that one a lot more because it is warmer. If I put the one that comes from Daniel Smith, you can see how much cooler that is as a neutral tint. Now, they're very, very different colors to the eye, and they really are very, very different colors, yet they both purport to be neutral tint. But essentially, they're a black derivative, and they can look very, very lifeless left on their own in great sort of areas on your painting. So they do need mixing down with other stuff, quite honestly, and used in conjunction with other elements. Now, I know you see me use a lot of this when it comes to doing painting clouds, because I'm using it very thinly and in very, very small areas compared to everything else, and the paint itself is relating to yet a different color somewhere right next to it, so it doesn't have this deadening effect. But this one is quite lifeless, I feel. This one is more transparent and it works well, and that's why I prefer this neutral tint. So that's really and truly why I sort of come away from blacks, because they soak in the light, they do not sort of reflect light, and therefore they're quite lifeless, quite dull, quite matte, and look like dead holes if you use them anywhere on your painting. So it is much better to consider using what I term, and I don't even know if this is an actual word, but I've always called them colorimetric greys. So please don't put in the comments that I haven't got a clue what I'm on about when it comes to that word. As far as I know, it may be a word, I may have just conjured it up one day years ago. But I say colorimetric greys because anything else that you use to make it dark is a grey derivative of some degree. And that is what we're going to be talking about next. Okay, everybody, now for tip number 2. And the thing is that having decided that we're not going to be making any of our darks in our painting from the tone of black in any of its forms, then what the heck are we going to be using to make our darks moving forward? Well, as we grow up, as we learn about making art and learn about painting itself, we also are told many, many times over that if you mix red, yellow and blue, the primary colors together, you're going to make a black. But that's not quite true. It really does depend on your choices of a red, a yellow and a blue as to how black you will actually make it. Okay, so let's just put some theory into practice for this. Now, I'm going to choose my primary colors, and I'm going to go in with a lovely cadmium yellow for my yellow. Clean the brush out, go straight into the red that I love using, which is a vermilion, as opposed to a cadmium red. And my blue of choice for this is going to be Cobalt Blue. And we're going to just put that in there. Now what I'm going to do is quite literally do this, mix them together. There we are. Now I'm going to have to tweak those mixes because at the moment we've got a very light brown colour. So I'm going to come in with some more blue and a bit more red and some more blue. Lots more blue. And maybe a touch of that yellow again. Now I can do this all day long. All I'm ever going to get is a dirty brown or a dirty purple or a very dirty green, depending on the leaning and the amount of these primaries that I actually introduce to this mix. So it doesn't matter what I do, I can't actually change that outcome. So let's look at a second set of primaries that I hope will show you how you can make a dark or a black from it. So let's go back and have a different choice. For my yellow, I'm going to be using quinacridone gold. So let's just put that in there. Beautiful yellow. Do love this one. Very useful color. And for my red, I'm going to be using magenta. Let's put some magenta in there. There's a little bit more water with that would be good. Maybe not that much water. There you go. Take some of that out. So we've got our magenta. Beautiful color too. And my blue choice for this is going to be Phthalo blue. Little touch more water as well. There we go. So now we have another set of primaries, red, yellow and blue. And the thing is that what makes these different to these is because, to me, I use these ones because they are the closest colors to process colors. In fact, some manufacturers call this cyan and not phthalo blue. Magenta is a processed red, and the yellow, either this one or very similarly Indian yellow, could be our processed yellow. But if we do the same as we did before and mix these together, then you'll see a very different thing happen. We are adding more of red, more of yellow, more of blue accordingly to increase the mix and to change the mix. A bit more blue. We're still in the purple vein. Now we're coming in with some more yellow. Now we're making it darker. A little bit more blue. Changing that again. And you can see that we can still shift around the blue, yellow and red situation. But because they are transparent colours and not opaque colours, that's why we're getting a much darker, because the light is passing through these because of their transparency. It's passing through, the wavelengths are being reflected only the colours that they are, and the opaque's just reflected all back. And so you're never going to get past a brown. That's probably the darkest you're going to make it. And this, however, look how dark that really is. So it really is the difference between an opaque colour, there we go, and transparent. Okay everybody, now for tip number 3, and that really is quite a simple one. How much or how little water do you put into your new dark colour you've just created for your painting? So let's have a look at it, see what happens. Okay, so let's get on, and the first thing I'm going to do, quickly mix up a 3 colour, which is what we've just been using. So I'm going back to my magenta and grab some of that quite thick paint. There we go. And go back into our yellow. So right there, I'm going to mix the two together actually, we may as well, we're just making a dark after all. And to our lovely blue. So now we're going to keep mixing this around until we get our dark colour. We're going to add the same ones in different proportions, a little bit more red, a little bit more yellow. Do this as quickly as I can and come up with a dark or a black. I'm getting a little bit green there, a little bit more red. And so it's just a process of elimination. We're trying to make a black, but we don't necessarily have to be a jet black. It can be a color black as such, as I've already mentioned. All right, so there is our dark color. Now, if I add water to that, you can see how quickly that starts to break down to merely a tint. And you can see that how that cyan blue is a very, very dominant color. I can actually come back in if I wanted to add just a little bit of yellow into that, coming down, maybe a little bit more red too. That's probably too much. It's all a case of by degrees, but you get the idea. Now the thing is, the more water you put in to begin with, the more this color is going to be a bit wishy-washy and it's going to dry very, very pale. So one thing is to consider when you're making a black, if you haven't got to make too much of a wash of it, then come in with color or pigment that is much thicker, less water. Come in with our blue, taking a lot of the moisture out of my paint. And if I leave this area, it's not being done. You wouldn't do this if you were doing a vast area of a wash or something. You want to get it down there, you want it to spread and move. But if you're just doing a fairly small area and you want this to be a dark, but you want it to dry up quite dark, i.e. we all know that watercolor generally dry a little bit lighter, probably 25-30% lighter than the color you put on as it dries down. And so that is probably to do, it's more to do with the quantity of water than anything else. And if you have very little water in your mixture, then this will probably dry not that much lighter than I put it down. Whereas this, with a lot more water on it, will just get paler and paler as it dries off. So that's just a very quick idea to think about, that when you are creating a color, think in advance of what you're going to be using that color for. And if you want a really punchy dark in a small area, then just make a mix that is very, very dry mix. Not too much water, enough to make the paint move around the paper. Okay, everybody, now for tip number 4, and probably the biggest one of all to talk about this afternoon. And we have got over talking about primary colors, mixing our darks from 3 colors on the color wheel. So now I'm suggesting to you, why not consider just using 2 colors and not 3 colors? And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm talking about, of course, complementary color. Now, all the colors in our palette will have a certain amount of complementary colors to other colors in our palette. So there's no need to rush out and go and grab new colors. You probably already have many of the combinations there to use in advance. So don't worry about that. But when I talk about complementary color, what am I on about really and truly? Well, if you just think back a little bit to the primaries, where we've got 3 primaries together, bring them together and they corrupt each other, of course, and they make a dark if it's transparent, or they make a brown muddy color if they're opaque. Well, if you think of a complementary, you've got a primary color and you've got 2 other primaries mixed together to make a secondary color. So if you bring that secondary over to this primary, you have in effect done the same job. You've mixed 2 primaries with 1 primary, you get that corruption. And that's the best way that I can explain it. Ordinarily, a complementary color will sit side by side with another complementary color, and they react with each other, and they can make some very splendid visual and very exciting color statements in a painting. You've only got to look at a sunset and what attracts us to that, and you'll see that the lovely oranges and reds in the sun react beautifully with the blues and the violets and all those other colors in the sky. So we love that type of situation. But when you bring them all together, when you bring those primaries together, whether it be 3 primary colors or a primary and a secondary, you are corrupting it. And what 2 complementaries want to do with each other is kill each other off, quite literally. If you bring orange to blue, you get a dirty muddy color. You bring yellow and purple together, you get a very dirty color, and the same thing for red and green. So what you've got to look at now is look at your palette and see some of the colors that you've got there that actually fall into this band. They need to be transparent ideally, and of course they need to be as close to opposites on the color wheel as you can possibly get, and that way you can create some really great darks moving forward. Let's have a look and let's just see what I mean. Okay, everybody, let's get underway. Now, first and foremost, there's my palette. The list of all the colors that I use are under this and every other video that I put out, so you can see exactly what I've got here. Now I'm going to be showing you my favorite color mixes for darks. There are heaps and heaps and heaps out there, endless colors, endless combinations, and you may not have the exact same colors as I do, but you may well have very similar ones. And if you look and listen to what I've said already, you'll understand the principles behind what I'm doing, and you can apply those to your own color palette. So what I would do is look at all my colors, and I would seek out those that are transparent and ignore all of those that are naturally opaque or semi-opaque. Now, one of my favorite color combos is to use Indigo. Sorry, not indigo, Payne's grey, but also indigo. Got to say, I had that on my mind, that's why I said it. But that is a lovely Payne's grey, really, really dark, and it's a gorgeous dark. But if I use the colour that I will put to that, would be this one, transparent orange. This is also a beautiful colour. Mix them together, and you're going to make a stunning dark. Now, depending on the level of the mix, whether it's too blue, too orange, you're going to get a cooler colour or a warmer colour. But quite literally, you get a dark. That's the most important part to that. But you can change the influence of that dark. And let's take it a little stage further. If I mix this down, I actually add a little bit more water. You can see how I can influence my colour to a redder, warmer colour, or I can mix it off to a bluer, cooler dark. So I can make tints from any of the darks that I create by literally influencing. There's the middle, that way is more warmer, that way for instance is cooler. So I start with my blue, end with my orange, and in the middle there is a similar transition through. So I can make my mixes cooler and warmer to suit the situation that I'm using it for, whether I want that dark shadow to be really resonating warm and heat, or whether I want it to be very, very cool. I have that option by simply influencing the mix between the orange and the blue. That's what I was trying to explain. Okay, so I'm going to write this down, and we have got Payne's grey and transparent orange. Okay, so that is a great combination, and probably the one I use most of all. But I used to use another one a lot, and I still do sometimes. And that is one that is made from Ultramarine Blue. This is a fantastic blue, semi-transparent, not totally, semi-transparent, but a beautiful blue. And to that I would use burnt sienna. Let's get some burnt sienna going. Put that right next to it. Now, not all siennas and stuff are exactly the same. Manufacturers will differ their mixes a little bit, so you do see some variations. But that is burnt sienna and the blue. Let's just mix them together in the same way. You get another dark, and that is possibly not as heavy a dark as this one, but it is nonetheless as important. You can vary that blue mix in there equally as much. You can vary, let's get rid of that. You can vary the brown in there, the burnt sienna, both transparents, and you can mix them together and create a lovely dark in the middle. Now, as this one, you can actually influence whether that dark is of the blue or the warm cool. So cool down through here. Let's just add a little bit of water into there, a little bit of warmth on this side. But you can influence your dark quite easily between the warm and cool. When you bring it out to a tint, you can quite clearly see how it has altered. Dripping. But you can see that. So I'll just add in a little bit more of our blue and a little bit more of our orange. Quite a bit of orange went in there. Probably a little too much. But you get the idea. And going back to our previous tip when I talked about the amount of water, this is quite crucial with this colour, because obviously it will sort of end up more lost, or more drying up a lot lighter if you put too much water to it. So you've got a lovely dark here, but as I say, it's another combination. And this one is Ultramarine Blue, and of course burnt sienna. Okay, now let's take we've got hot colours, we've got a hot potentially, or a very cool but very dark mix. We have got a lesser dark mix, but again we've got the warm and the cool. and it does tend to be more of a hot colour. Let's have one that we could possibly use in more distant shadows, and for that I'm going to be using a green for this. Now green, we're going to use a complementary, so we're going to choose our complementary as a transparent colour. Let's just put the green in first. This is Phthalo cyanin green. Now it's pretty much the only green that I've got, although I did find another green that I was lent. I don't normally use it, but I've lent it, so we will have a go at that one as well, just to see what it does. But I will say that it's not one of the colours I normally use. Now to that green, let's put beside it some magenta. Now both these colours again are transparent colours. I mix them together. Look how they react with each other. They completely corrupt each other, which is the desired effect. We can bring some more green in and more red in accordingly as we want. But we do make a nice dark. And it's a very cool dark. These considered to me look quite hot. And if I add water to these, then they will come out a little bit cooler. Let's go on this side, and a little bit warmer. So you can have this dirty, dark purple value in here with regards to having a much cooler dark. Now I said yellow is an option. Well, it really isn't an option to make a black because of its light properties. But if you want to use purple in a mix, magenta is suggesting we're already on the way to purple. So if you use the diazine purple or one of the other purple colours that you can get and mix the green to that, you'll come up with very, very similar value of colour combination, just as an extra. I don't carry a purple as such, but that will be the effect that you will come up with. Alright, let's have a look at the green that I was lent. So I've not used this green before, and I'll put the name to this one as well down. I'm not sure what colour this one is. It is a Dale Rowney one. Hooker's Green Dark. It's a colour that I don't use, but quite a nice green. And we'll see how that fares. Now to that, I'm going to add in some more magenta. Let's go in the magenta. Let's mix the two together. There's overpowering at the moment with magenta. Let's come back in with some more green. And play around with this again until we're happy. Yeah, it comes up with a very different dark, to be fair. Now, I don't use this green at all, but if you happen to have Hooker's Green, and I would say and suggest to you Sap Green as well, will have a very similar effect. So let's just bring that down, and we can come in with quite a dirty grey. That's actually quite nice, quite like that. And we can have a warmer version of it on the side. Quite like the way that that is almost neutral. That green and the magenta, this green really actually quite neutral. Unlike this one, very, very influential over the violet colour, the dirty colour. But this one, I quite like that. May I have to have a secret tube of Hooker's Green Dark in my arsenal for the future. Who knows? Okay, some old favourites that lots of people use. One of those is using some burnt umber. Let's just put some burnt umber in place. And to that you can mix any of the blue colour values. So let us go in and let's just go in with our beautiful ultramarine blue again. Now once more we're making quite a neutral dark, and this is where the difference between using a much warmer colour in burnt sienna with the blue, on this occasion both the same blue, using that is a lot hotter, it's a lot warmer, it will have a different influence. So if you just use the earth tone of the burnt sienna, burnt umber, you will have a different outcome. And again, they will come down as these ones have done. Let's just do that and show you very quickly. We can bring that down as a bluish influence and a warmer influence on this side. Very not too dissimilar really in many regards. Quite a neutral balance in that dark. If you get those mixes about right, you can bring that blue in and create quite a neutral colour with the umber. It almost seemed to be cancelling each other out in the terms of dominance, as does this one. Here you've got lots of influence from either colour in the centre, very much so here as well, and quite honestly here as well. That quite didn't mix down as I'd want it, but there you go. Not bad anyway. Alright, other colour combinations you can use. Well, one of the ones that doesn't get talked about too much, and that is that of neutral tint. Now, neutral tint is considered a bit of a black, but it does depend where you buy it from, to be fair. And that is two companies that I use. One, this one, which is Schminker. Okay. And the other one, which is from Daniel Smith. There we go, there's that one. Now the Daniel Smith one, as I showed you earlier, is considered quite a bit cooler than this one's quite a bit warmer. So you can mix a variety into this, to be fair. I'm going to mix one with some orange, just see how that goes into there. Put some of that orange in, into that neutral tint, and it will influence the dark. You can add more or less as you feel you need to. But you can influence neutral tint if you want to into a warm or a cool dark accordingly. And you can actually add some blue, not that one. Let's add some ultramarine blue into this one, and we can influence this red into a cooler dark. Look at that, beautiful. So making tints from any of these colours, but you're going starting off with a base colour of the dark. So neutral tint is also another very useful colour to have. Let's try one of the extreme colours. Let's go with a phthalo blue, a process blue, and we're going to put that in here. Very influential blue, as is its cousin, the green above. Now what am I going to put into that to make that so dark and fiery? Well, I'm going to use Sepia. Now Sepia is another lovely colour. Oh, it's already got some of that blue already going on in it. Just clean it up a little bit so you can see that it is sepia. There we go. So sepia and that blue. Let's just see what we do with that. I don't necessarily use this combination, but it is available on my palette to do so if I wish to do so. Sepia is a lovely colour, and you can make a beautiful dark with that blue. But that blue is oh so dominant. It really is. It just wants to be everybody's mate and join forces. But it's a nice dark as well. Okay, everybody, now for tip number 5. And it really couldn't be any simpler than taking all the colours that you have at the moment at your disposal and seeing which of them fall into the category of being transparent or indeed semi-transparent, and then making some swatches using them. And that way you will see some of the color mixes that you can create, some of the darks that you can make, and you have it as a ready reckoner for the future, just like the ones that I did earlier here with the different colors. And I've now filled them all in so you can see them. You have the ultramarine blue, the burnt umber, the tints, the phthalo blue, the sepia, all of these different colors, and they are quite simply some of the colors that I happen to have, all except the hooker's green. But I might keep that, as I said already. But literally make a swatch. Look at each one. Put all your blues with all your reds and oranges, and all your greens with all your reds and oranges, and just see some of the lovely color darks that you can create. And you can influence them between the cool and the warm combination. And then you can take them out with a little bit of water and make tints so that you can see how light and what they look like when they dry up as a tint. So that's it really. I hope that some of what I've said has been helpful to you. I hope that watching some of the demonstration and mixes has been useful, and if it has and you've enjoyed this, then please give the a thumbs up to the video. That'd be fantastic. If you've enjoyed it more and you don't mind subscribing, it costs you nothing, but it really does help the channel grow and reach a much wider audience. So that would be awesome if you don't mind doing that. And also at the same time, press that bell icon and the notifications bit, all that stuff. It all helps me. And if you want to add a comment or two, please, I love to read them. And indeed, if you've got any other color combinations that I've not even thought about, put them in the comments under there. I'd love to read them. And you can be teaching me some stuff too on colors that I'm not even thought about. So there you go. That would be fantastic. And while you're at it, why don't you nip on over to the Patreon, take a look at what's on offer. So much, over 170 odd videos, full length, fully narrated for you guys to get involved with, learn from, and interact with me on our private community page on Facebook as well. So there's a lot on offer, well worth checking out, and I'd love to welcome one or two of you as my latest patrons soon. So anyway, with that all said, enjoy this, have a go at it, make some swatches, get to see what you can do. But above all, whatever you've got at home, if you haven't got any transparents, I'm afraid there would be no option but to pop out and buy a few transparent colors. But most of you are going to have sets that have got transparents in, so there really isn't any need to go rushing off and spending lots of your hard-earned on new colors. Just use the ones you've got and see what you can make from them. And until the next time, till next Friday, take care everybody, stay safe, happy painting wherever you are, all the best, bye bye. Hi everybody, and welcome back. No, start again then. Here we go. And mixing watercolors, darks. No, darks for your watercolor. Start again then. Hi guys, welcome back, and a great big warm welcome back. No. A better idea and to go off and mix and play around with the color mixing yourself and enjoy that and have that. I'm just rubbing on. Not good.